Like what you're hearing? Check out more Cellar Door Skeptics every week right here on Spreaker and iTunes. Make sure you come back and check out new episodes with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna. And always, remember, prepare for the revolution.
Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome to episode 145. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I have a little bit of a head cold, so there will probably be a few coughs, a few sneezes, a few, I don't know, indigestion. I don't know, whatever the hell you get when you have...
You got the microphone that low, catching indigestion?
Well, I don't know, that's what it feels like, And it's weird that my beard keeps getting bigger and I haven't, trimmed it in a while. And it's like touching, I have my pop filter and it touches the pop filter a little bit. And it's just a weird feeling. And then, I pull away and I'm like, oh, now you can't hear me. And, then I'm sitting 10 feet back. But you'll have to excuse the graininess of my voice more than I usually have. I don't know who got me sick, but it's not been fun.
You got a house full of kids and school just started. So I think that's kind of the process, isn't it? Like, that's not what happens every year at this time?
I think so. I don't remember getting sick last year, though. So who knows? Anyway.
Well, let's just blame all the socialists or something, right? Is that the standard?
That works for me. I like blaming socialists, and, it makes sense. It's kind of typical. It's atypical. Is that what they call it? Is it atypical? I don't know. It's somewhat typical.
What's the typical conservative thing is they want to take everything and spread it around. So we're going to spread all the cooties and the germs around, and everybody gets equal shares of the flu or something ridiculous. I don't know. Fox News does some fun things. We're gonna have some interesting conversations here in a little while with some ties into some craziness. So I'm excited about this episode. I think it's going to be current events, but it'll also have some interesting science and stuff in it. So
yeah. What I wanted to start the show off with is a discussion about Brett Kavanagh. So for those of you listening to this, there's been a second revelation. And originally when I planned this segment, that hadn't been released yet.
Yeah.
So a lot of the research I had was geared towards, not as much discussing the allegations, but talking through the emotions, the side of things where a lot of people are going to immediately dismiss this. I've heard a lot of different arguments.
Dismiss the second accusation.
They're going to dismiss. They're trying to dismiss the first one. They're trying to chalk this up to boys being boys. This is their discussion point of, we have too many snowflakes. We have people that are freaking out. It's just the Democrats telling us we can't have something we want. Now, in fairness here, and we can get into that in a second, but in fairness, look at it this way. They already have a majority on the Supreme Court. This is just another one. I mean, they have a majority. So it's not like they need another, judge on there specifically. We know why, they want, Kavanaugh. But
a super majority. It's even a stronger majority.
But that's it. So we could talk through that, right? We can sit here and analyze that. So it's not like Democrats are just coming out of the woodwork to stop this any more than they normally would, except for the fact that he's being accused of sexual assault. And I had to have a conversation, a couple of them this week, where people are like, well, look, it's just this Me Too movement going too wild. This is way from his past. This is something, why did she wait so long to come forward? And while those sound like valid questions, those are like passive aggressive troll questions. That's what it is. It's like all of a sudden they're like, hold on a second. We dismiss all your legitimate reasons for it. Now you're going to give us this? Well, you're just making things up. But that's not it. This is not like a made up, scenario. And the immediate dismissal of what a woman's claiming has happened to her in a society where you can watch sexism run rampant is just so illogical to me that it's like, why are you immediately dismissing it? We're not accepting it as just bare truth to say, yep, no matter what, this is exactly what happened. We're saying, yes, we believe her. Look at the patterns in society. Look at what has happened. And you know what? It should be investigated. No one's actually saying, let's ban Brett Kavanagh right now. They're saying, let's investigate this. Let's talk about this. She brings a good point to light. Let's have this conversation now. And you know what? Maybe, hey, let's stall this a little bit. I mean, for Christ's sake, they sat on, Obama's nomination for 8 months, 10 months? And that had nothing to do with sexual assault this time. Obama's nomination was not a sexual harasser, at least a known one. None of that came to light. They held it up because they didn't want somebody. And now all of a sudden they're churning around and trying to say, well, look, you're just using the same thing from our playbook. But that's not true this time. It's just 100% untrue. And that's the biggest problem here is if we continue to allow this, and it's kind of funny, there's a lot of people that, aren't sticking out or standing out and having this conversation. They're not saying, hey, maybe we should talk about this. Maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't just immediately dismiss this person. People are kind of saying, well, I agree with that, but not everybody's speaking up. I'm saying now's the time we should be saying something. We should be saying, hey, hold on, this is not about, cross-party politics. This is saying, hey, look, our society finally has come to the realization that it's wrong to sexually harass and sexually assault women. And this is coming to light. So this should be do we really want a guy that's been accused of this to just be able to walk free and go, yep, you can join a lifetime appointment without actually having a discussion about it?
I agree. Basically what this is a huge social problem. Like, this is a massive social problem, and a lot of things are coming to a head, and it's really coming down into a major focus on this particular position. And the Supreme Court, what it literally does is act as a moral compass and a constitutional guide for the entire country. It takes all of the legislative and executive branch works and it heads them up to the judicial and kind of takes as the moral arc of what our society is doing, what our country is doing. And it's really important. That's the reason why we really need to understand the moral compass, the quality of character of these people that are getting the nominations that could potentially be on this board. Because this is I understand the argument, like the boys will be boys, the 17, 18-year-old impulses, that the male impulses that are relatively unchecked and in society are not taught and not told that they should be in check. They're kind of left to their own merits in a lot of cases. This whole thing is something that needs to be slow, that is changing, and it is slowly changing. The idea that we're saying this 17-year-old at the time, when he was accused of attacking Blasey Ford, the woman, the first accusation, like drunkenly attacking her and trying to rip her clothes off, which he had a bathing suit on underneath, so he couldn't get and through that because he was too drunk apparently. Those are the accusations. Now, to me, I understand you made a really bad decision. This was an assault. It's a full-fledged assault. If it's real and if it's true, which in a moment I'll address my perspective on that. But basically he said, I do not think it's very hard to find someone else in the judicial system, on a bench, somewhere who is qualified, even in the Republican Party, that has never assaulted a woman, that has never drunkenly attacked a woman. That is my perspective here, is that I don't think it should ruin this guy's life. He has made it through, and this is something that he may have grown from. This may have been a major educational point. He's completely denying that it ever happened, so obviously there's no growth there.
He obviously hasn't grown from it, man. Well, you don't deny it. I'm sorry, man. If it happened, you do not deny this. He's denying it because he's worried more about his position than he is really about, the person who was assaulted.
Yeah, and so that's the whole perspective here, is that if this did happen and he did learn from it, he would acknowledge it and he would say, yes, this is a mistake. I talked to her in the past, but no, this is a complete denial across the board. And so there's something that tells us there is either he is denying this to hold power, or, you know, in the case where someone would try to deny her, basically the whole idea of denying her is basically saying that if you are making this up and you're falsely accusing this man, you have essentially ruined your life. Like when she comes out to this, she is doxxed, she is attacked, her family has to move out of her house. So like the idea that this is just some ploy to stop the nomination, I understand it from a strategic point of view if you're talking national politics. But this woman will forever be known, just like Anita Hill is forever known for the Clarence Thomas investigation. And there was an investigation there. The FBI did investigate that. She will be forever known for this now. She will never be able to go anywhere in this country without someone just doing a quick Google search to see who she is, what she's done, that she was questioned and called of all manner of names on the conservative pages and attacked. Who chooses this? If this is just, you know, whimsy, political whimsy, or I want to make it up to attack some guy that I went to high school with. I mean, this is a major life destroying decision, and she decided that, you know, she was gonna, I guess, bare her soul, bare her person, bare her life to, you know, the powers and winds of justice, because I think she thought that society would make the right choice and say, okay, we're gonna take you seriously, and this guy is gonna be a little bit suspect.
He shouldn't just be a little bit suspect. I mean, we're talking about appointing somebody for a life.
The society isn't even a little suspect. Like it's either they're completely calling her completely stupid, or they're saying we need to completely investigate. Like there's no middle ground of people like, okay, let's talk about this.
Yeah, and that's, you know, that's my thing. Look, man, at some point, even if you've learned from your mistake, there's certain positions you should not hold. If you were a bank robber, right? You might have learned, gone back, got a whole master's degree in finance. Should you be allowed to run a bank?
No.
I mean, you know, some banks may say, hey, he's really smart, this is worthwhile, we're going to do this. My gut would say, probably not going to let you run a bank. Hey, you want to, you know, work on a large investment firm where you can't steal physical cash? Okay, you know, let's have that conversation. But, you know, and I had a slight discussion with somebody this morning as well, you know, and they were, you know, she essentially was like, she posted this Louis C.K. thing. And, you know, basically, I was like, hey, that's
done his time or something? What was the...
No.
Like that he has done his time, or that he should not be allowed to stand up anymore?
No, I mean, well, I'm kind of that mind that I will not support him, period. But no, she, you know, she posted something where he had made a point back before he was accused about, you know, women's rights and treating women with respect and listening to them and all these other things, right? And it's a fair point, but you know, the whole, it's kind of, it's not a mute point, but it's kind of dumb hearing it come from his mouth and trying to use him as the voice. There's so many other people that could be a voice. This is what it says. It says, when a person tells you that you hurt them, you don't get to decide that you didn't. And that's an amazing sentiment. Don't disagree.
Yeah. Before we knew how he behaved in his off time, he was considered a feminist and a pretty strong, I guess, supporter of equality. I always thought he was. I mean, he's raunchy and risque, and he was pretty mean to his first wife before they got divorced, which is probably why they got divorced. But
yeah,
I mean,
in his realm, right? In his realm, you know, if people want to give him a second chance, fine. I don't agree. I won't do that. Doesn't mean other people can't. But he's not running for Supreme Court. You know, he's not running to have a lifetime appointment. And I don't even know how old Brett is. I know he's pretty young.
He's towards the later 40s. I think 47, something along those lines. But one other thing, just
look
real
at Scalia.
Quick, he already Brett Kavanaugh already has a lifetime appointment that he's going back to no matter what happens here. Yeah.
And well, that's disgusting. I think that should be questioned, and he should be taken out of that as well. Like that to me, that's where this should go. They should because, you know, and I know what the fear is. There's a fear that, you know, look at that Harvey Weinstein, right? That was a beginning of an example that is being made. Look at what happened to Louis C.K. Look at what happened to, you know, one of my favorite actors, or used to be favorite actors, Kevin Spacey. You know, I can't watch any of his stuff anymore. Just, I see him and I could say, yep, this art was really good. But how many people were harmed by him making this really good movie? And you look at those things and it started this whole trend. And I did some research because, like I said earlier, what's one of the discussions that always comes up? Well, people are pulling this out of their hat. This woman is doing this just because she wants to stop this, and somebody put her up to this, and
she's a pawn
why
of
would
the
she not?
Democrats or
Why
whatever.
she's a pawn for Democrats? And I have a great clip we could play in a second here. But think about it this way: Neil Gorkovich or Gorsuch, Gorkovich. I don't know who Gorkovich is, but I know somebody named Gorkovich. Anyway, whatever his stupid name is, and his horrible beliefs, we rallied against it. We argued against him being appointed. We talked about how disappointed we were in our judicial system that this type of a person is going to be appointed. But in fairness, after you get rid of the whole blockade, there you go. There's a hashtag, blockade 2017. But even when you get rid of that and you just look at him as an individual, he was not being charged with sexual harassment. Now, maybe somebody will come out now and say it, and if they do, I hope they speak up. But as of right now, we have to believe he is not sexually assaulted anybody, nor sexually harassed anybody to the point of we should be having this conversation, right? He hasn't done that yet. But nobody came up with a false allegation against him. Where's the stories? Google it. You aren't going to find it. So this isn't a fake allegation. This isn't a movement that took, picked steam, and all of a sudden we're like, oh, hey, let's do this to this guy just because we really don't like this guy. Nobody liked Neil. There was a lot of arguments against Neil, but nobody brought out a fake argument. And that's when we talk about being skeptics, man. How in God's green earth are these people not sitting around and going, hey, you know what? That makes sense. That, you know what? Yeah. Nobody accused Neil. He's just as much of a piece of shit as, as Brett is. But
that's something, when you had mentioned it earlier, we were talking about like what we were going to do before the show. Is like, I didn't really think about that. Is that if the whole idea of these women coming out against Kavanaugh is that this is just strategy by the Democrats, none of that was done on the first one. And that's the swing vote, right? That's bringing things back to exactly where they were with Scalia, who had passed away, who was just an absolute without question conservative vote. And so the Kennedy thing, that is the swing vote to completely and totally make this a 5-4 without question Supreme Court. And so this one here, it does have more weight. So the Democrats do have a little bit more to lose if Kavanaugh gets this position. But to say that these women are coming out just because the Democrats are like, oh, we got everything to lose, we got to fight this, I understand the strategic moves here and the strategy, but I do find it hard to believe that these women would be willing to put their names and faces in today's internet media age out there. Like Anita Hill was a big deal, and it turned into the year of the woman in 1992 when the most women were elected in history of the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House, just Congress. And so, like, they definitely, that was a big deal when Anita and Clarence Hill, like Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill, like that whole thing, so whether or not we should revisit him too then. I mean, those were legitimate claims in the time, and they were just kind of left aside. I mean, Joe Biden did a terrible job taking care of that. And so, like, there's all kinds of stuff that we're looking at into the past of people who have been accused and who have been taken down. Why can't we take down Clarence Thomas? I mean, those arguments were legitimate at the time, and these arguments against Kavanaugh are legitimate now. They need to be investigated thoroughly. And if we need to pull him down and move him from office, and Republicans have a supermajority right now, they can put someone new in. But I don't think these judges should be, once you get in, you're in forever, and you're there's no reproach. There's no way to bring you down and question, your past or something like that. So, like, even if Kavanaugh gets in, there should still be a valid, legal argument that he broke the law, because that's kind of breaking the law, assaulting someone. You know what I mean? Like, even if he gets in, even because Congress is not a court of law. They've been talking about proving, Kavanaugh was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. That's not what's happening. This is a nomination process. If he actually gets sued and is taken to court, then it becomes proving beyond a reasonable doubt. But what we're doing right now isn't that. And so, like, it doesn't have to be that. They're just trying to find a moral character and get the nomination. So there's a variety of differences there.
Exactly. Here's what Janine, and I think her name is Janine Pryor, Justice Janine from Fox News. This is what she has to say about this.
So, why are we just hearing about this now? Diane, when you get the letter, what do you do to make sure it's real? That the person is even real? Given the left's penchant to buy fake dossiers, make up facts, and collude with the media to sabotage even the President of the United States, forgive me if I think it's all hogwash. Okay, you say, quote, the individual strongly requested confidentiality, declined to come forward or press the matter further, and I have honored that decision. Diane, you honored that decision? Did you even speak to this alleged person? Did you meet with her, talk with her, interview her? Did you ask her to meet with others? Did you ask why she said nothing for almost 40 years? And Diane, why would you wait to even send it to the FBI? Is it because nothing in you and your pack of demon rats, that's what I said, demon rats, a.k.a. Democrats, bag of tricks, was working against Kavanaugh?
I don't know. You talked to her points, and she's like, did you interview anybody? Did anybody do this other investigation? Are you just standing this person up? Oh, and it's because you're all demon rats. Like, not only, lady, did you just invalidate your conversation? You invalidated your conversation. Like, I don't agree with you or anything you said. I don't agree with your logic. But literally just saying, and I listened to this. I heard a short clip of this on John Oliver's show last night, and I literally just pooped my pants. I'm like, who has a public television? What network publishes a public television where the moderator of a show, the lady that's the star of the show, gets to get up and yell, and this is a news show, gets to yell about and call people demon rats. So I looked this up, like I Googled this, right? I was like, all right, when's the first time demon rats has ever been said? And this is Urban Dictionary, so God only knows if this is really factual or not. But this was posted back in 2006. This is not a backdated post. This is an actual post from 2006. And where they talk about how the Democratic Party is soft on crime, soft on national defense, and is brainwashing the public. That's okay. When Demon Rat came out. Was 2006. This lady, and then John Oliver was like, well, look, she's saying it here, and here. And it's like, yes, she's literally just creating a narrative. And the problem is that, if you wanted to talk about whether we don't want Kavanaugh to be, brought into office just because we think he's going to repeal Roe versus Wade, okay, fine. Maybe at that point, again, not seriously, but maybe at that point, demon rat is an okay, term. But what you're doing is you're telling this lady that she's using her personal experience to now come after this guy because the Democrats are putting her up to this. And people are buying into this garbage. People are buying in. And that's what I'm saying is we can't sit here. When people post that stuff, we have to say something. You don't have to spend hours on arguing with them. But we should be people should be starting to speak out. Because if let's say you're a Republican troll, and you're not actually trolling, but you believe this stuff, but you're still trolling, as an individual, because most Trumpites like to troll. And, if you call this out, people will ignore you if you have no interest in changing, if you're just trying to get a rise. But if you truly believe this, you should be called out. We should have this conversation. There's somebody on our friend Joseph's page today, or yesterday, or maybe on the weekend or something like that, where essentially he said he used the same argument just in a lot better. He deserves a TV show more than this lady does. For Fox News going wise, at least he would be a good journalist compared to her. And he posed this thing and basically called it out and said I don't why are we even focusing on this, blah 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 blah. And so I kind of called him out a little bit, and I was like, hey, hold on a second, man. You are literally saying we should deny this. This is not why people are going after her. Nobody's going after her. I mean, you literally said the shoe is on the other foot and it is making people squirmish and cry wolf. This lady's not crying wolf, for Christ's sake. She's not trying to ruin her own career. She's not in politics. She doesn't make a living doing this. And then this dude's answer, and this is the answers that I've been getting. This is the whole point of the whole discussion for this segment, is people are then saying, well, you know what? That's not what I said. I didn't really say that. I'm not pushing aside. I actually believe her. Well, if you believe her, why are we putting people into office that have done these things? You literally said we're doing this to cry wolf. We're all joining sides to cry wolf. And yet, folks, these people are sitting around here and they're saying, well, maybe it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. No, let's start disqualifying people now. Let's take these people out of rotation now. And as you said at the beginning of the show, Hanna, how many other qualified people exist?
Yeah. There's tons of Republicans out there that are in judicial positions, that are leading judicial minds, that have never actually tried to rape a girl or attack a girl or do something horrifying to a girl at a party. I really think there's a bunch of them. I mean, I would say there's a minority of people in life in general who have literally jumped on and attacked a woman. I mean, I would hope that's a minority, and people that would try to say that that's a boys will be boys thing. I would love to hear what they think when that's their daughter who's attacked. I mean, we hear about the conservative mindset.
They're going to get their guns. That's what they're going to do. They get their guns. They're going to shoot them.
That's what I mean. So like, it's boys will be boys until it's your daughter. I mean, this is a political argument that happens at a distance. When you bring this home into the real world, that's when it changes for these people. And it would for Democrats, and it would for anyone else too. Like, let's say this was on the other foot, and the Democrats had a supermajority, and the Democrats are trying to jam in a candidate. Let's say Bill Clinton was going to be a Supreme Court nominee. There's a shitload of history there. It's just a bad sexual history of things that are questionable. And if the Democrats were trying to jam that in, it would be a legitimate questioning process of women who are accusing him. And I would hope, I really would hope that the Democrats, that the progressives, the party of, the diversity in this country would be able to be like, nope, listen, we've got to stop. There's a problem here. We understand that there's an election coming up. The strategy says we should jam this in just in case we lose our supermajority, but it's the right thing to do to extend this process, to fully flesh out this entire process, to see if these accusations are true, not because of partisan winning, partisan gerrymandering the vote and picking this and picking that, because it's justice. It's the right thing to do. And you're accusing me. I didn't do anything. I'm accusing you. You didn't do anything. Put all that aside. Who is telling the truth? And we can sit here and say this is partisan strategy all day long. But I don't care if Neil Gorsuch has some kind of perfect record. That's sorry. The Democrats didn't get out and vote in all the midterms. He got in. That's the reason why. For Kavanaugh, if he does actually have this checkered past with all these accusations, and he really is a morally questionable person, that sucks. That's terrible. I hope he doesn't get on. But if he's not, if this is all false accusation, which I highly, highly doubt it is, because like we said earlier, these women are potentially destroying their lives and earmarking any future they have. If that is true, and this guy is being falsely accused, I understand the strategy. The Republicans executed theirs perfectly by not allowing anything to happen during the Obama administration. But the Democrats would have to answer to that. I mean, it's justice. Is this true or not? It sucks, but if he's really innocent, then we need to find that out, though. That's the thing. I don't know. There's so many people of equal volume screaming at this. I don't know what the answer is yet. I think we need to do some more research, and there needs to be a more in-depth and thorough investigation. And the experts who are investigative, and like the FBI and whoever else would be able to do research on this to give us more insight, need to do that work. And so I really can't go too much further into this, because eventually, just like the Republicans want in this upcoming hearing on Thursday, where the Republicans aren't even going to question Kavanaugh or Ford. They hired some woman to do it because that looks better. There's a woman prosecutor who's been hired by McConnell to do all the questioning, so that it's not all white men questioning her about her sexual history with Kavanaugh. And so, obviously to make it look better, because after the Clarence Thomas hearings, that women in this country got really upset and just went out and voted and made a big difference. So they're trying to minimize the damage that causes. Like, it's just, everything in here just needs to be slowed down and really needs to be looked at. And I mean, I could be an optimist or a utopian dreamer here, but this is just going too crazy, and it's not representative of what the people in this country really want. I think more people would like to know the truth more than see their party win.
I think we know the truth. I think that it's just a matter of substantiating the claims. And I'm sorry, at this point, we should be believing women, and we should be listening to these people, because in the long run, if you look at the statistics, false accusations are very rare. It's
the same argument. It's the same argument with the transgender people in the bathrooms.
That's actually there's never been an instance where that's actually happened.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's so rare as to be statistically zero. The false accusation thing is so rare as to be at least statistically close to zero.
Yeah. And if you look at his past, what did he spend his teens doing? Did I get drunk a lot? Yep. You know how often I hung out with women drunk? Not that often. So maybe that was a fault on my behalf, I guess. But, I mean, and I'm not saying I'm any better. I'm just saying that, you cannot excuse this. Boys will be boys. People will get drunk. There was a history of what was going on inside of your cult, is what I will call it, inside of your school. You guys had all these weird football cult things.
Well, he was in frats and stuff too. Like, he was part of these little clubs.
Yep. And so there's that, and now there's a second witness. So I'm sorry. At this point, he should be tried and convicted, in my opinion. But at this point, he should at least be removed from consideration. And if this doesn't change, if this doesn't show this, then again, all it does is argue for a larger revolution where we start to burn the city to the ground. With that being said, though, we have a fun segment headed your way. Because guess what time it is, Hanna?
What time is it?
I don't know. Have you figured out what time it is?
It's science time. It's science time. It's science time. It's science time. It's science time.
I don't know what this song is, but I found it on YouTube, and it's amazing. If you hadn't figured out from the song, it's science time, folks. We founded this show mostly in part because of you, not because of me. With science segments. Your old show, you used to spend a lot of time doing science. Mine was discussing with Christians and interviewing atheist people. But the science part of your show was always something that I enjoyed listening to for the most part. Sometimes you went on a 45-minute discussion, and then Teach Out would say something, and then he'd go on a 45-minute discussion, and yada yada yada. But
well, one of the things that changed is the amount of time for prep. Like, you can't do science segments and not really prep for what's going on. Like, at least the way I used to do them. So, like, I love doing the science segment stuff, but like, I would write an outline. I would cover the basics and really do some research, because there's nothing worse than just guessing or thinking something. And so I like some of these stories that we do, we kind of hit light, and we don't go nearly as deep as I did before, because I don't have any time to do anything in life at all anymore. But so you found this story about glue, and I think adhesives are amazing.
You do. What attracts you to adhesives, Mr. Hanna?
Well, most of the time I do all fastening and joining at work, and it's all steel and clamping and bolting. And one of the biggest problems that you have with that is you're creating stress concentrators where you're weakening your materials by cutting holes and drilling holes and making threads. So if you have adhesives as a fastening, you can do some really, really important things. You can change the geometry, like dovetail grooves, where you have the material itself creates a material lock, and then the adhesive holds it in place. You create joints and compounds and connections that are actually stronger than any bolt, aside from like getting into welds where you're melting the steel and turning it into one piece as opposed to multiple pieces. But like there's some really cool stuff out there and some really innovative stuff. So what the heck is going on with this glue here?
So I'm going to give a really quick intro, and they actually have a video, or I guess it's a video. I'll play you the audio of it, and it's only a minute and a half, so you don't have to. And it's not a crazy Republican yelling at you this time. So, but Purdue University, and I found this interesting, honestly, not probably for the same reason you did. I found it interesting because the headline says, "Is your furniture putting you at risk for cancer?" Well, as everybody knows, I work for a 3PL that used to work, and help out a very large, furniture client named Steelcase, right? And so, this is kind of like, I immediately, the headline inside of Reddit makes me go, woo woo, the first thing I thought. But then it says, well, underwater glue could provide a safer, sustainable solution for a $100 billion industry. And so then I sat there and go, all right, so I'm going to ignore that first line. That's obviously a catch tagline, but I'm going to ignore it real quickly, and I'm going to actually look at, is underwater glue safer, and is this something that could help revolutionize the world?
So when you go to the beach, one of the cool things you'll see, if you look at the rocks, is that they're covered with mussels and barnacles and oysters and all sorts of sea creatures. And one neat thing about them is these animals make adhesives to stay in place and to keep them from being picked up and taken away and eaten by predators. And if you think about adhesives, when you go to the hardware store, all the glues that you'll see in the adhesive aisle, they don't work underwater. But these animals have developed the technology to stick in wet environments. So one thing we're trying to do is figure out how these adhesives work, but also we're making synthetic versions of them for applications development down the road. So what we've been doing is actually taking these new materials that we're making, adapted from the technology of the animals, and we actually can glue things together underwater. And so you can take pieces of metal or plastic or wood, you can dunk them in a tank of water, and then you can come in with the adhesives that we've made. You can apply them onto the substrates that are completely underwater. You bond them together and let them cure, and then they're completely stuck. What we have now is a very, very strong adhesive that works underwater, maybe one of the strongest ones ever developed, and that in itself is kind of fun. It seems to outperform a lot of commercially available adhesives. And one other thing we wanted to test the performance against was the actual animals after which we've developed these adhesives. Interestingly enough, the new biomimetic material that we made is bonding a lot more strongly than the animal adhesive.
So that, in my opinion, not only is that important, right? Because they're talking about how this adhesive, A, is bonding stronger, and B, is using less toxins, and it is not harming underwater creatures as much, right? So think about it this way, right? And this is what actually, in the long run, attracted me to wanting to have this conversation today, is because what is widely known inside of this world that a lot of Republicans deny? Climate change. What is climate change partially caused by? Trash. Folk. It's horrible waste. It's our inability. We have one-use plastics, and we could get into the straw debate at some point. And I do want to have that conversation further down the road. Yeah. I don't want to do that now, but this is important for the EPA. This is an important fine because if we pollute all the time, that's a big thing. It's the big thing, and America has very poor regulations, even though we're the best country who's done the most with our administration. But if you think about it, if you can't curb polluting, what's going to happen? We need to find better, more useful ways to create things that decompose better, that don't create large toxic buildups. And that's, to some extent, what it looks like they've done.
Well, I really like the idea that they're using naturally occurring compounds as an adhesive. So they're proteins and different types of things. So there's a variety of things that are made organically that are just sticky when it comes to, a variety of things. So, and what they typically use in most of these commercially available adhesives is formaldehyde. I run into formaldehyde all the time because one of the materials that I use a lot of times for my plastic materials is a material called acetyl copolymer, which has formaldehyde as its main plastic base in it. And the stuff stinks. When you cut it, it has a very distinctive smell. And it's probably very unhealthy, but it's just one of the chemicals in one of the plastics that's used because of good strength and wear and machinability properties. I would love to see somebody replace that chemical with something in a material that I use regularly that isn't dangerous. The same with these adhesives here. So like anytime there's an adhesive used in cardboard boxes to make them more compostable, yeah, I'm all for that. You grind it up, the glue inside doesn't turn into the sludge that destroys a compost pit. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea to me. You know what I mean? Like if you think about it, like the adhesives inside cardboard is something that's preventing them from being recycled properly, reused properly, and even in composting being used to help grow vegetables and fruit and food and whatever. All of these things are good things if we can find a substitute for the chemicals that we're using. The whole PFAS thing that we're dealing with all over Michigan right now, it's a big deal because this chemical wasn't known to be as bad as it is now, and now it's terrible, and we're finding all kinds of different things to replace it with because of a health emergency. Like this is a great example of science doing what it's supposed to do. Is there's a problem, we need to find a solution, and as long as your administration or whoever is in charge of health risks is going to say this is an important thing, you're going to get funding, you're going to have teams that have the financial capital to actually be able to spend time to study this. Because one of the things we've talked about multiple times with our friend Abby, who comes on the show and talks about her genetic research and stuff with HIV, is that half of the time is spent fundraising, and then the other half is actually doing your research. It's that big of a deal. And if these people have this, this could be a very financially lucrative thing if they discover, something that's brand new and usable, and it's organic and healthy for the environment. I mean, everything about this is cool. I would love to see if they can scale it up to an industrial application, so we can start replacing some of this more dangerous stuff that we currently use everywhere.
Yeah, and that was the interesting thing from Purdue University. They talk about, what the materials engineering is doing, and how they've helped the research teams. And they've been able to make progress by first learning how marine mussels stick together to rocks themselves. So think of it this way. Like, no offense to what you do as an engineer, Chris, but you should transition your career this way, because can't you even see that this would be a lot more fun? Like, ooh, I get to go figure out why mussels in the ocean are sticking to rocks. That just sounds like a lot funner job than machining tools. In fairness, that sounds like a funner job than I do. I just don't think I'm smart enough to do that job.
Well, it's more of a biology thing. So like, as an engineer, what I would be doing with that is that chemical, that adhesive process, that would be a completely solved thing. That would be a new tool for me to use in said problem that I need to make a part for. I would design using a specific set of tools. I have these materials, these adhesives, these fasteners. These are the things that I'm allowed to use, and I need to make a widget that can solve this problem. This could be another tool that's like we mentioned multiple times, like the cardboard corporations, like they can't make a properly recyclable material that can be composted and can be used to further, I guess, feed crops and stuff. And like we have a huge cardboard overflow. It's all over our landfills. If we could use that to properly create compost or whatever, but we can't with what we have now, then these companies say, well, it's not that much of a difference. This material or this adhesive and this adhesive operate the same way, just one is incredibly more biodegradable. This is an easy decision, even if it's a little more expensive, because there's all kinds of incentives for being green. And we've talked about this on the show, is that companies that say that they're doing something as far as social justice, basically actually coming through with doing something green, organic, good for the environment, good for what we call social justice, and good for the millennial communities. Like, those are things that bring people to your company. They increase sales. They increase customer or employee performance, and they increase job applications and all kinds of really good stuff. It's a win-win, really. And I mean, you could take, well, we're going to stay exactly the way we did things in the past, or you could discover new stuff like this, where you're not using some weird chemical. You're using what mussels use to stick to boats and rocks.
Yeah. And think
That's
about
just
it.
nice.
Yeah, in my industry, in warehousing and manufacturing.
Yeah,
right?
you're way more into it than I would be.
Oh yeah, like in reality. So, for example, we have these table legs that are made in China. They send them to us. They found a way to reduce the on-hand inventory by creating a pack where I have to put a certain component in based on what style a table they bought. And it was easier to reduce the inventory because we had to pack it. Well, it's a pain in the butt, right? We have to open the package up, pull these boxes out. Well, somebody got an idea that said, what are you guys doing with all those smaller boxes? We're like, we recycle them.
Yeah.
They don't have tape on them, in fairness, right? And somebody goes, well, I have a box that we throw keys into that would fit there. Okay.
I mean,
so we want those. We sell keys you can rekey your desk. It's a steel case thing. I don't know what to tell you. Steel case sells keys to desks. People lock their desks. I don't know. I don't lock my desk. I don't care. But some people do. Some people have HR confidential things or things they don't want people to steal, like whiskey bottles and things like that. I don't know. I have no idea why people lock all that stuff up, but they do.
Well,
right?
if you're a machinist and you work in a place and you have $5,000 worth of tools, you lock your toolbox when you leave your your shop.
Yeah. There you go. Same thing. Anyway, you're detracting from the story here, my friend. You're tangenting it. Yeah. So anyway, so we have another department inside of the building that uses key boxes. They say keys right on them, blah, blah, blah. They look nice. I think the boxes cost, 30 cents a piece or something like that. So they're not super expensive, but they probably go through 100 of those a day on a good week. So they go about through 500.
This is just a small little
bloody box. We go through a minimum of 500 columns in 2 days. So they have plenty of boxes that they could use. So somebody's like, hey, I want you to reuse these. So they got engineers involved in all the packaging, and they spent a bunch of money on doing a little bit of research and seeing, can we substitute this box for that box? Well, guess what? They now no longer have to buy these other boxes. In the long run, there's a cost savings for the year. Good for them.
Yeah.
Great.
That's awesome.
Now think about it this way. And I'm going to tangent this right into the glue thing. In my industry, we have to tape everything up with packaging tape. Everything has to have packaging tape on it. Even these new boxes that we're giving to them, they put packaging tape on. Think about it if you could make a packaging tape that is composable or however you say that stupid word.
Compostable.
Yeah, you can't say it either. So
it's compostable. That's the way you say it.
All right, compostable. It just sounds dumb. It sounds like a dumb word. Anyway, if you can do that, you can then go back to the government. The government could say, hey, guess what? You guys are using this type of a box. They're coming all over. Guess what? Here's a tax incentive for companies that recycle these boxes. And, like you said earlier, now the boxes can actually be composted even farther. Before, you would have to rip the tape off. So think about it this way. In my world, when we get a box in of parts and we have to take everything out of these boxes, and we have to, because you can't get parts from China or Europe in tubs or totes in reusable things. A, it's not economically viable for the company to send the stuff back and forth. But B, there's all sorts of regulations against it, so you have to use these boxes. We get all these boxes in, we have to strip the tape off. Think about it. If let's just say that's 10 seconds for somebody to cut that open and take the tape off the box to recycle the box, which is what we do as a company, that 10 seconds can then be saved. If I have to break down 200 boxes a day, I'm now saving 10 cents, per box. Yeah, okay. You're saving money. But now
take 2,000 seconds.
Yeah. Now take that throughout the whole company in every different area. And when you talk about a $55 billion company recycling this stuff, taking just that small process out of having to peel that tape off the box, because you can just cut it down and throw it in a recycle bin or put it on a skid to go to the compactor. Holy crap, folks. That for even for the companies that want to deny climate change and want to pollute the environment, even those companies, that's a cost savings to your manufacturing time. That's something you would look at. And so, yes, maybe that roll of tape costs me $1 more. Maybe it costs me $5 more. But what is my cost advantage to this? And the more they continue to go along this study and work towards figuring out how to use this type of non-toxic glue, the better off all of our lives will be, and the better off these millionaires who, basically slave us to death will be.
I got real quick, just a fun thing. I jumped on the computer real quick. You do that 10 seconds per box, 200 boxes a day, and you are doing 5 days a week, and you are doing, let's say, 50 weeks, so they give you 2 weeks off. That is, and then you divide that into hours. That's 8,333 minutes a year, or 138 hours, almost 139 hours, you would save. And just time, you're not doing that stupid thing. What could you do with that time to make more time?
Exactly.
More money.
So
Almost 140 hours.
Yeah, think about it this way. And we're one out of 4 entities inside of that plant, right? And Steelcase has 8 or 9 plants. So think about it this way. So let's just take 139, I'll say times 4, because there's 4 entities in a plant. So we'll just round it down to 500 hours a year, right?
Yep.
Take that times, you take your inflated cost, so you're looking at a cost savings of $18,000 a plant times, what did I say, 10 plants, 9 plants? That's $180,000 a year that you can repurpose that labor or cut costs. One of the two, right?
Or give raises.
Okay, yeah, you could do that. We all know that's not coming. Come on, Hanna. I mean, seriously.
I know. But I would. All of these things can be basically attributed to scientific progression and growing corporations and making people's lives better. Like, there are benefits to all of these new things when it comes to being more organic, being more green. You can take it. So like, oh, it's more expensive, it's more work, it's harder to be more green. Yeah, it is. But also there's ways to bend it so that you can make a bunch of money. I mean,
in this case, it would be a cost savings. And at $180,000, I had 2 cost savings, one at 56 and one at 32 this year, that I gave them before I knew any of the stuff was going down. And this $180,000 cost savings would be literally an easy discussion, because it doesn't take any work to do much research other than finding out what your true cost savings or cost avoidance would be.
That's so cool. I don't know. I love this kind of stuff. These are fun discoveries. I hope there are more of them, and I hope we get science funded more.
I do too. But I mean, we have a pretty anti-science government right now. So.
Wah wah. Is that the stupid sound effect that everybody's doing when I can't remember who the guy was. There was a guy that got in a bunch of trouble. He's a conservative or Republican pundit, and someone was like complaining about like a woman who had been attacked, or there was like a handicapped girl that had been not given her health care, and during a panel, the guy someone was telling the story about like a woman being attacked or a handicapped person being attacked, and he was like wah wah, and everybody's just like, dude, did you seriously just do that? Like that. Then after that, like, everybody's been making that sound or whatever. But like, I mean, it's just, there are so many things that are so bad about the people that are basically talking about these kinds of things, these green energy things, and the stuff that we see in the media. I would love to hear more scientists talking about it. It's like when Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson are talking, like, there need to be 5,000 of each of those guys.
At least 5,000 Neil deGrasse Tysons. I don't know about Bill Nye sometimes.
Well, yeah, but like the Neil deGrasse thing, I don't know what happened with some of the accusations on him. Like, there was some accusations about his character when he was younger and being an aggressive male. So I never heard any final, but he seems to have skated out of that without any major issue. And so, I mean, that could be something that someone needs to look into, or if anyone knows the updates to that would be something I'd be interested in knowing. But
we should look into it. I didn't know. I don't know about that. Yeah. So it would be good if somebody wants to, help us out, or heck, I'll do some research and find out what happened to Neil, because I actually forgot all about that. And see, there you go. That's A, the privilege showing, and B, it's because he's been buried by some people that have done even more horrible things,
Or we like him, and so we're a little bit more likely to kind of overlook some of the things that he may have done wrong.
Could be that too.
Yeah, there's a social bias there.
Yep. So there is, and I think you and I should readdress that next week or the week after. So
research.
There you go. I'll do a little bit of research, and we can have that conversation.
All right, what's next?
The last part of the show, and the reason I wanted to do this is some of it's a little self-deprecating, to some extent, right? I mean, there's part of me, there's certain TV shows that I like hate watch, like, and I don't talk about like how Desperate Housewives hate watch. I'm talking about, I really enjoyed it. It's a very well put together, but it's ultra depressing, and it makes me it really makes me feel very upset sometimes.
I don't think it's depressing so much. It's like I just love the fact that someone is kind of taking social media and the internet and online communities and kind of like slapping me in the face with it. It's like, dude, listen, it's not all amazing. And so like, I don't know, it's just nice to have someone question me every once in a while, but like not an accusatory question. So
yes, you're right. Yes, except for some of the Black Mirror episodes. And if you didn't know, that's what we were talking about. And there is other shows that are similar to Black Mirror that we could talk about if we have time today. I don't know if we'll have time or not, but Black Mirror has, ever since I saw the first episode, I was kind of a little turned off by it. It's a very hard show to watch. It is definitely filled with content warnings. It's definitely, I want to make sure everybody listening knows this is not something you just pick up and go, oh, I can feel good about watching this.
Turn this on in front of grandma. Let's do this.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not something you watch in front of your kids. Now, I've tried to convince my teenagers that they should watch this because I think that it would create conversations between us and that I'm open to having. But it's not, and neither one of my teenagers want to watch this. They
what?
I don't. Some of it's probably because they feel it's weird to like something your dad likes, right? I mean, growing up, how many things your dad liked did you like? Other than the Tigers?
A lot of them.
Were they all sports related?
No, like just in general, my father and I are very similar as far as a lot of things that we're interested in when it comes to, I don't know, entertainment and sports. And then if you back it away from sports, like television and things like that, like we've always meshed pretty well. And then obviously I'm an engineer and machinist. We work together and we've been together doing stuff since I was 14, 15 years old. So like, we're compatible. We fight a lot because you fight with anyone who you work with, but no, we've always been really compatible on that kind of thing. So like this, I don't know.
So I'm the oddball out, I guess. Then my father and I got along with sports, but we didn't get along with politics, music, of movies. We do like a few movies. He likes the National Lampoons. And now you look back on it, and actually Chevy Chase is really creepy. But I grew up. I guess
you could put music in there. Like there's no way I could do the music with my old man.
Yeah, but anyway. So in my world, I don't know if that's why my kids don't do it. I mean, my one son likes anime, and I loved anime growing up, and I kind of got out of anime for a while because it just was one of those things. I was like, this is kind of cool, anime. But I just kind of I found like the Family Guys and the Futuramas and those things, the comedy side of it, funnier. I never really got into, anime again until the last year. And I've, him and I've actually watched quite like Sword Art Online 2. You hear those names and I'm like, that's just stupid. But we watched it. It's actually like very well written. The second series I didn't like as much so far as I like the first one, but some of it, and it brings back some of that immersive MMOs. They start now talking about, more existential things. So I suggested to him, hey, let's watch Black Mirror together. And he's not really taking the bite. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like,
Does he even know what it is?
Yeah. I think that or he's already watched them all and, thinks that I'm going to get you upset. But I'm inviting him to watch this. Like, my wife, she's like, no way in hell am I going to say what these kids. She doesn't like this show. She hates the show. Oh, yeah, because it's an ultra depressing show. I'm sorry, man. This is like a very highly depressing show.
I didn't find it depressing as much as like I was just like there are there's two edges to every blade on this. So like, they talk about some of the things that we find absolutely stunningly amazing about our new technology, but there's also like a downside to it. So like I don't know. I like people exposing that secondary side. I don't find it really too depressing. It's more like, hey, warning, your philosophy might have overlooked this. Think about this and then get back to me next week. Like I don't know. Yeah. I guess I like thinking about some of that kind of stuff.
It takes the dystopian and the Orwellian theories, and we had this conversation actually on the show. I don't know, a year ago or something like that about Orwellian.
Orwell and Huxley.
Yep, Huxley. So we have to dig that episode out. I should re-listen to that episode. Anyway, we're diverting here. So the whole Black Mirror thing, what happened was there was this random article somebody posted in on Facebook, and I don't even have the original article that they posted, but it's like China's becoming the new Black Mirror, and I'm sitting here like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. There's no way that's going to happen. And the first thing I think of is this whole bee thing, right? Everybody wanted to make these electronic bees, and that's one of the episodes that's on there. I like that episode, in fairness, but all these bees attack people, and they're used as like terrorism
they
devices. Yeah,
they get hacked,
and that makes sense. And you know, in fairness, you know, a lot of people, I won't name people very close to me, will cover their peepholes to all of the webcams. You know, most computers come with a webcam. People will walk by my computer and like turn it so it faces down because they think somebody's going to somehow hack into it and, you know, record us doing something. And it's like, what do they want to sit there watching me sitting on my fat ass on the couch eating potato chips? Or I don't eat potato chips. I eat, you know, chips and salsa, watching TV or playing Minecraft. Go for them. You know, you want to watch me playing Spider-Man? Hey, fine. You know, I don't give a shit.
So but the whole Black Mirror idea, like exactly what Black Mirror likes to do is it likes to take something that we think is very innovative and interesting, and it says like, well, this could be a downside. This could be something that could be negative, but they do it in a very cinematic way. A very story driven way. So like one of the big shows that, I mean, this is a major show, is one that dealt with personal, I guess, credit scores, personal, like your upvotes in real life, like your upvotes on your social media. So like your profile was a real thing that affected your life directly. It's like the whole country and everyone had like a single upvote system. And so,
so it was a rating system. It was it's season 3, episode 1 is what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest, I don't remember the name of it right now, but I can look it up in a second. But that's essentially what that was. Is, you know, yeah. So what happened is you would walk around and your whole life was a social media system that rated your whole life. So if you swore too much, people could downvote you. So it was a completely democratic, you know, system in some aspects, right? You know, you could walk around, you could be nice to somebody, they would up or upvote you, but it created a lot of, you know, false people. Like people would be super nice to others for no reason, and it was using like a reward punishment system on purpose. And, you know, yeah, I get it. Could social media have turned into that? Yes. I mean, did it kind of a little bit? Yes. I mean, you know, in fairness, look at what happens when, you know, somebody decides they want to out somebody else, you know. And I could pick, for example, well, we talked about Brett Kavanagh earlier. Now, that's a little bit more public example, but look at that lady's life. People can find where she lives. They can do all these things on social media to help destroy her life, you know. And or look at David Silverman. He was accused, in my opinion, very fairly, but, you know, everybody started attacking him on social media. Everybody basically said, well, you know, American atheists made their own decision, but there was a lot of pressure to say, hey, do you guys know this is happening? What are you all doing about it? And, you know, they had internal meetings and made a decision, but there was a lot of pressure that came from that because a lot of what they thrived on was through a social media style basis because they're an atheist organization that doesn't get, you know, mainstream TV spots except for when David goes on and yells at Bill O'Reilly. You know, that they got mainstream because of that.
Used to. Yeah, Bill O'Reilly has been taken down by his own Me Too moment. So that's one of the things that's like weirdly bringing like a whole theme back to the whole show here. But the whole idea, like what China was doing, is essentially creating this system, but like creating a state system for approval and denial, and like making it a big deal to the point where it's not just like everyone in society is kind of sort of self-sorting into these different social media categories, because obviously in different continents and different countries it's not just Facebook everywhere in the world. There are a bunch of different varieties of things, but like in China they have enough of a information control system through the governmental apparatus that they can control that. And so like what they've done is they basically created a upvote downvote social score for people, and it's a way that they can kind of keep track of who's a problem person and who is a model citizen, but also it's a visible thing for all the other citizens. And so that's kind of what the whole thing is like you can look up what your neighbor's doing. Are they good enough? Are they doing their civic duty? Like it really comes down to that Orwellian idea of Did Bill yell at the TV hard enough last time when they showed the face of the opposition party? Because Oceania has always been at war with East Asia, or whatever version of that whole tale you want to tell. China is kind of sort of using that as a structural tactic to fight the information age. The proliferation of information.
Yeah, and this is a two-facet conversation here. One facet, right, is the facet about how they're using this media and collecting it and controlling it through large corporations and a socialized government, right? We can have that conversation in a second. The other side of it is what they're utilizing as a way to do different things to people. And again, they're using all these cameras and all these things they've installed, right, to check on people's behaviors. Now, this is what they claim, right? They claim the 4 areas of focus are going to be honesty in government affairs, commercial integrity, societal integrity, and judicial credibility. Now, we just had that conversation for almost 35 minutes about judicial credibility.
Yeah.
In this instance, it would be a benefit to be able to go back and go, hey, you did do that. By the way, buddy, you're out, right? That would work wonders. That would make this so much easier. We wouldn't have to listen to, the Fox News of the world. Or, I mean, again, literally as we're sitting here and I'm scrolling through Facebook, these effing people are sitting here going, yep, Democrats are doing this. And this is a Trumpite again. This is somebody that actually worked for the Trump campaign. His wife is on social media saying, well, look, I'm a woman. You should believe me just because I have a vagina. And guess what? I think it's wrong because of this. And it's like, no. You're just discrediting them. You don't get to use your minority status to say, yep, I disagree with them and you should listen to me because of that. It's like, no, you don't get that. That's not how that works.
That's false equivalence. Yeah. It's a fallacy in argumentation.
So that's really what's happening here, right? That's what's happening is they're starting to fast track some of this. Back in 2013 or 2014 is when they started to fast track this. And they started, putting different collaborations, working together. How do we figure out how to run a firm that can help through different, outside administration to collect all this? And at first you go, hey, the judicial thing, that would be great. And in fairness, even if somebody was watching me, I would be less likely to steal. You would be less likely to, scream at somebody in public. Yeah, maybe that would be a little bit of a benefit. We would have less people, yelling at each other online or wasting 17 hours a day on Facebook. That would probably be a benefit. But at the exact same token, they talk about how they can use these things to curb people. So, for example, if you go to the store and buy a half gallon of whiskey every day, guess what? You're now going to be charged with a social disconstruct because you're violating a social norm. I'm wearing atheist t-shirts. So they're going to look at me and say, yep, well, maybe not there, but in a Christian nation, they would look at me and I would be like, yeah, you're a minority. Oh, and by the way, you're representing something that goes against our social norm of religious, congeniality. And
in Mike
that's
Pence's,
sickening if that can happen.
In Mike Pence's future of the world, if this same situation was instigated in the United States, where that kind of, Big Brother oversight was available for his use, he would use it to watch people like you, like what you just said. Like if you're wearing an atheist t-shirt on public, you would become a citizen of interest, or whatever term they would use for that. And you could potentially be docked for that, not following the proper corporate stated religion, or whatever it would be that they would use for their justifications for their actions. And so there's a variety of things that, like this whole idea, if I guess inculcated into the state system, there's only one area where I like the idea of having some kind of, not just internet. Like, I'm not talking about bringing it into the real world, but having some kind of internet system created. And so one of the things that I've talked about multiple times throughout the show and throughout our history is that if there was an internet social security number or something along those lines, so like the only way you get online, you only get one profile. And that profile essentially removes that, that transparency or the anonymity. And so that anything you do online where you feel I'm nobody will know who I am. I can create a fake profile and I can attack someone. I can be as vulgar and racist as I want, and nobody will ever know. I can go on 4chan and a Donald on Reddit, and I can just be a disgusting person. And then I can go be a teacher in an elementary school somewhere. Like that kind of thing. Like, you don't have that transparency. And so when you go online, let's say there is a social security number for the internet, you get one. And when you muddy that thing up through a variety of bad decisions, that can be searched and looked at. And so like, this is your history. This is what you've done. Like that kind of transparency for the citizenship, for the people. I like that idea, but I don't like the idea that the government can basically say like, we're creating a score. You're doing good or you're doing bad. Like that I have an issue with. But like the fact that if we could remove some of that anonymity, I'm just trying to remove like there's the troll that you can never find. Like, I don't know how to do that, but I would love to try something.
I don't think this is the way to go. And I'll just be frank and say I agree. I disagree with you on multiple points with that. And my biggest ascension on that is who's making the decisions on what's socially acceptable and not. And yes, in fairness, I have a bias in this because I am typically one of the people that's very socially unacceptable. I mean, for example, we have a podcast where I rant and rave on. I lost a job because I didn't fit into their cultural social norm. And, while a lot of libertarians will be like, well, that's okay, I'm saying some of the things you can get disqualified for are not okay. And I'm not saying, I don't want to make this whole show about me losing a job because I'm an atheist and they were Christian. Yeah, whatever, right? Good, I moved on. I'm okay now. It does happen. But, the thing becomes is, how do they make that decision? What if the majority, the corporate majority that we live in right now, makes a decision that says, you know what, it's not me too, it's him too. What if they make that? What if that becomes, they're like 65% of the nation supports that. Look, for Christ's sake, look who got elected as president of the United States. This is a nightmare for me personally, and I'm not even a minority. And I feel like I'm living in I don't even understand how this could ever be possible, right? And you're right, some of that's possible based on, not controlling the trolls, not helping to filter some of this stuff out or stop that. But I don't think the answer is to go into a full-blown, hey, let's give you a online social credit score. I do agree that there could you do that and limit certain things? Like, okay, so for example, you officially go into the dark web and you're researching kiddie porn, right? Fine. Yeah. You know what? Good. You want to figure out how to make homemade bombs. All right, you get put on a list that should be questionable to fly. Yes, but at the same time, until you commit a crime, what you're doing is kind of like what's that movie where they predict the future? Is that the movie? Yeah, where they predict the future and they make actions based on a prediction that has never happened. You're prejudging people, and if you could get to the point where you could actually accurately judge the future, okay, that's a different discussion. We're not there, in my opinion. A and B. That's an even scarier dystopian thought process, because if they could predict something's going to happen, unless you can actually demonstrate and show that this is really, really going to happen, we should be very concerned at what decisions they're making because of it. And because if you think about how the timeline works and how everything works together, think about it this way. If I knew about a crappy decision I was going to make in the future, and I knew about this, would I be able to prevent it? And what's the probability of me as an individual preventing it? And now we're getting into, super crazy mechanics, kind of like we did a little bit last week. And I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but that's the problem with this social credit score, is that they're banning people from different things. As of May, they said millions, I'm just going to claim thousands for now, of people from being able to use high-speed train trips or flights because they've been blacklisted. Now, we don't even have to get into why they were blacklisted or any of these other things. But think of it this way. If they don't like the fact that, Hanna, you drink every morning when you get up, but you can function at your job doesn't require you not to drink at it. You don't drink while you're at your job, but you buy that much alcohol and you drink in the morning. Or, on the opposite side of things, you get out of work at 4 o'clock and you go to the liquor store and you buy a fifth of whiskey every day. Should you be judged if you go home and drink yourself, into oblivion, right? And you're not affecting anybody else, you're not harming anybody, you're not neglecting anything, and you get up and go to work the next day, who am I to come into your life and say, you know what, Hanna, you're only going to be able to drink a tenth of that whiskey because that's a social norm. People normally only have 2 drinks a night, if that. Who's to say that this is something that we should be basing what people are allowed to do on that? Should they have to go to shitty hotels because of that? Should they be able to be denied flights? What if I'm a super successful person? You know, the only thing that this would be good for, like you said, is like trolls. And maybe it would stop some of these rock stars, you know, and movie people, you know, sexually assaulting people. Maybe that's a benefit to it, I guess.
Basically, my only thing is like the Chinese social credit score that we're talking about here. I find that as a detriment to society. That is, it's an affront to basically, you know, free speech. What it would do is kind of restrict. If anyone has watched the Black Mirror episode that we're talking about here, like you see that life becomes this paranoid, schizophrenic moment where you're basically trying to hold yourself in check. You're trying to find who you are, trying to actually live a life, but you're also paranoid that anyone anywhere can say something and then just create this cascading slippery slope of just horrifying. And the episode that we're talking about actually does cover that. I think you said it was the first episode of season 3. It was a really good episode. I genuinely enjoyed it. And basically a woman is just going through the whole process and kind of just in the end just totally gives up. It's really cool. What I would advocate, not so much for like the score system, is that essentially removing the anonymity. I've been trying to find a way to remove the anonymity. So like the people that can go online and be horrifying and never be found out. So like the idea that, as we talked about earlier, that Brett Kavanagh could go online and just be a disgusting person without question. But since he just used a random Google Gmail login, that he could do that and nobody would ever know who he is. What I suggest is that the internet itself, globally, this would have to be a global institution, right? You know, the anti-Trump as far as global communication is concerned, like that everyone on the planet would have essentially a number, their social security number, their internet number, whatever we could do a variety of things. And what that would do is allow for like a search for, okay, 156357. That person, what's their history? And you can see their post history. You can see what they've done. You can see what they've said. You can see the comments that they made, the things that they liked. And like that would give, you know, some kind of I guess context to who that person is on their internet profile. And then you could even, if you really wanted to go heavy, you could give that person's name or whatever. But like just giving some kind of context so that it's not completely and totally anonymous, to try to bring some of this, like where you can just be a horrible person online and never receive any repercussions from it. Like I'm just trying to find some way away from that.
Until you outlaw that type of discussions online, until you say that this is a crime, you don't have the right to regulate other people. And I'm sorry, like I will disagree with you aggressively on this in the aspect that, think of it this way, you can go online and hate on Hillary Clinton all you want. You could do that. You could do that, and you can say all these immediately awful things, these untrue things. Your name
would be attached to it.
And your name's attached to it. But is it wrong for people to say present false truths until we get to the point where we can say there's certain things that become off limits? Are rape jokes off limits? Is that something that we're going to credit against people? You know, you're going to get a large discussion or argument over that. I think they're tasteful and tactful, and I don't want to listen to them anymore, right? But that doesn't mean that we go and ruin everybody's lives until we decide through a governmental system, which we have in place right now, that we should no longer be having that type of, you know, discussion online. Think of it even this way, right? These people go to these white nationalist rallies, people out them, they find them on social media, and now publicly we are shaming them and ruining their lives, right? This is a huge controversy because we don't have a law that is saying you can't be a white nationalist. We don't have a law saying, hey, maybe you need to reformat your thinking, right? We don't have a law that's saying you can't publicly go out and say these things, but yet we have people going and crusading against it. And I'm all for that in that specific case. But the problem becomes is when we start taking that vigilantism, you walk down a slippery slope. And yes, I understand this is a slippery slope argument, right? If you do it for one thing, you're going to the other. But I'm saying, before we institute this whole system to give you a credit rating, even just an online credit rating, my friend, you have to understand what are the constructs, what are the things that are going to change this person, and how can it affect their lives? Because, again, you're going to create a separated class system is what's going to happen. And I could play the clip if you want. Some of me almost thinks I don't even need to play the damn clip anymore, but you could play the clip. In the Black Mirror episode, they are not able to get it. She's not able to get this flight because her credibility score isn't high enough. And in fairness, the only reason she wants to get this stupid, flight is so she can make her friend's wedding and be superficial, because if she gets to this friend's wedding, she helped plan it, she's going to get a whole bunch more points to become more popular, right? Like some of it's saying, hey, it's a disadvantage to have that, and at some point we need to let go. But think of it this way. If this is currently in China right now, this is affecting millions of people's lives. And what we're doing is we're saying, no longer are you able to do any of these other things. You're now going to be constricted by exactly how you act at all times, and it's going to be based specifically on how society feels, or they don't even know how it's governed right now. They don't know how this is even being governed or why these people are being denied. They don't know what the parameters are. But these set of rules are being put in place, and before we sit there and put these people into further abject poverty, which is what is going to happen, before we do that, we have to actually look at the ramifications. Is there a better system? And how can we obtain this, utopian dream you want to remove the filth from the internet without going to the place where we make people become abjectly poverty-ridden? That's what has to happen.
Well, basically, my whole argument on this one is not so much that the social credit score is the good thing to do. I'm not agreeing with that. Like, I really don't think that what they're doing is good. What I'm saying is that I've been trying to find a way to remove the anonymity. So, like, having the social credit score, I don't think that's a good thing. I really don't. Like, I really don't think that is a good place to go. And all of the things in the arguments that you have here, I agree with those. All I'm saying is that what China is doing with, restricting some things or keeping track of some stuff in the global aspect of it, if you could give everyone something that would remove their anonymity, not so much that like you're a good person, you're a bad person based on your previous behaviors. All I'm saying is that it's not anonymous. There's no way for you to be anonymous on the internet. If you removed all of the anonymity, no other scores. There's no credit score. There's no human score. There's no any of that stuff. I find that all repulsive. All it is that if you do something on the internet, if I look up Chris Tanner, what have you done, and I can see a list of that. It's completely and totally transparent. So someone that you're a friend with, a family member, they are on their online profile. You can look at it and say, oh, I didn't know that this person hated Cubans. And you can ask them about it or whatever. That nothing would be completely hidden by it. That's the only benefit that I would see from having some kind of online internet identity. I don't think this social credit score system, I don't think of anything like that would be a good idea. And the Black Mirror episode completely shows that. It shows the problems with that because, like you've said multiple times, is that you have to create who makes the decision, who makes the moral authority, who makes the governmental decisions as to what is a good and proper citizen. And the next thing you know, you're in room 101 being told that 2 + 2 = 5. Like, the only issue that I think would be benefit on this is that change in what we do currently with our internet is allowing people to be anonymous, and then only in certain cases do we actually find out who they are when they're a really horrible person. I've been trying to find a way to create a reduction in anonymity on the internet because I think that would be a social benefit. If people have to deal with the social ramifications of posting horrible shit on the internet, that we would know who you are. I think that's a positive. And so, like, what China's doing and what the Black Mirror episode shows, those are both bad things. I don't want to go that far because that is obviously like intensely Orwellian when like you're really trying to control like that's thought police as you would see in the book. So I mean, pretty much that's where I'm on that.
Except for think of it this way, Hanna, and I'll bring it back to the Me Too movement, right? Right now is not beneficial for women to do this. This is a hard thing for a lot of women to do. They have to stand up and say, these are my experiences. These are the things going on. You're now churning that into a public thing. So when a woman wants to be anonymous right now and say, hey, by the way, these things happened to me, and you have a bunch of them all come out and say, all these things happened to me, but guess what? If I say this, it ruins my whole life. What are you doing to that? That person now is going to be outed. Take it even just a step back and think about it even 5 years ago with the atheist community. What was one of the largest things? Pastors coming out. There was a whole movement helping to protect clergy people, called the Clergy Project, from being able to be outed, lose their livelihoods because they no longer believe. They help them transition, help them find better areas more suitable to their lives, help them reposition themselves so that they didn't end up on the streets in abject poverty. You create an online, credit score or whatever you want to call it. You create anything, and you create non-unanimous. You lose the other side of it. You lose the people that are able to come out. If you're being abused and you have no other outlet, but you can come out online and finally somebody talks you into saying, hey, by the way, come live at my house. Here it is. Oh, you have 10 kids. Take all your kids with you. Come over right now. By the way, we'll protect you. It's all anonymous. You're
making an assumption that emails and like basic personal, direct messages would be also.
What if they just post a blog? What if somebody runs a back-end blog? I know that, but how many people?
I understand that,
dude. But we had people blog for us that were not out atheists that would lose everything in their life. There to this day, there's at least 2 I know of that used to blog for us that are not public. We're not allowed to share their real names.
I understand that, but all of our personal communications and everything, those, like your emails or whatever, like I wouldn't expect those to be. What I'm talking about is like posts on forums, posts on comments and threads and things along those lines. Like you can't just go on there and attack someone and be, whatever we expect a troll to be. But if you're having personal communications back and forth, like the Clergy Project, that's a great example. The Clergy Project isn't having communications on forums out in the public sphere. So like the public sphere itself has to be a place where you can have communications or whatever, but you don't get to hide behind anonymous 331717. Like that isn't a thing that you can do. But if you're having personal private communications back and forth, so like the Clergy Project has an email, you send an email, that isn't something that is completely and totally visible. What I'm saying is that like people, like you create a post, I'm so happy I'm a non-believer, and someone just attacks you incessantly and into oblivion. You can't, that person doesn't get to hide behind whatever profile they have.
But the other person that's publicly sharing it also does not get to hide either.
The
other person, the person posting it online in the original format, right? The person going, hey,
I'm an atheist.
They're no longer anonymous either. They're now public. If they can't or don't want to be public, that to me, that's almost a larger harm to our society than to try and eliminate the trolls. We need to discover a better way to help eliminate trolls. And that's fine. Maybe you can do a portion of what you want to do, but you also have to look at the other side of the coin. And in my opinion, we're not anywhere near there yet.
So basically, you would say that the public sphere or whatever, so we can have those conversations, whatever we communicate, but also we still need to have a small space you can create that's private so that you can have those conversations. I mean, that's what private communications are for. I understand what you're saying. It's like someone that doesn't want to be out, that doesn't want to be out societal in whatever end they are. They don't want to be publicly shamed for their decision. But like that's the thing. Like on the show for the entire Black Mirror thing is like it restricts what you do, and so I don't know what the answer would be as far as to like trying to create a community. So maybe you could create private anonymous communities. You would be able to create a place where people can't come in and come out. Like the whole idea of what we have with the private groups and Facebook and on Reddit where it's private. So like you can't just you post something and it doesn't just go to the open internet. It stays into a small cycle. I mean, these are tools that we already have. So like if you don't want what you're having what you're saying now to go out into the private to the fully public internet. You can actually control that. What I'm saying is that, like, when you're posting something completely out into the open, unrestricted, I am an atheist to the whole internet. Like, that's what I'm saying. It's like not so much that like I'm in this tiny little group, in this tiny little community. Like, I am an atheist to the entire world, and then people come in and they're trolls and disgusting to you, and they can hide behind the anonymity. Like, that's what I'm trying to curb. So, like, I don't want to curb, like any private communities, private groups, private stuff like that, like where it's locked in and you don't want your stuff to come out. What I'm saying is, like, people that are involved in just like in the public square, the whole idea of the First Amendment, in conversing in the public square, that you cannot hide behind the internet anonymity. Like, what you're doing there is going to be recordable, or at least searchable in the history. So, like, there could be some, I guess, a variety of solutions that you're getting into there. But, like, in the end, like, there needs to be something to help remove that. And I think creating something like a social media, social security number is a good place to start from that. And I would love to see someone try to do it. I would love to see an experiment. Maybe the Pew Foundation does an experiment where they say, we tried this and it didn't curb anything. And I could be completely and totally wrong, just like I was when we talked about homeschooling and socialization. I thought that would be a major imperative to that. It wasn't, and I was able to just admit my incorrectness on that one. Like, I would love to see what the internets can do on that. I don't suspect that I would be wrong on that, but I would love to see what maybe a large scale study would do as far as removing anonymity and seeing what happens with trolls and people that are bad actors.
Yeah. I don't think there's a more positive aspect of it, and I think the difference is in where I would go with it is that it's all about educating and voicing your opinion. It's all about, calling people out in public. Let the trolls troll online. Let's bring people back to the reality. Let's start to curb the programs and the different companies that financially gain off of profitization of this, right?
They'll curb them. How do you curb them?
Well, you can curb them by, if you want to give a rating, you don't give it to an individual. You start going after companies and creating regulations that they need to uphold honorable content, and then we can start working on what are the guidelines for that and what does some of those things mean. That's what we can do. You can base a lot of it on a humanistic basis to some extent, and you can move forward from there. But the problem is if we don't start educating people, and again, I have a hard time with creating a whole bunch of laws to try and curb all this stuff. I feel that
I only have one law. It's just that the only way you can get on the
online fucking number that you're associated with Chris Hanna, right? And I'm saying that's a punitive measure, my friend. You are creating a punitive measure. I'm saying is before we create a specific punitive measure the way you're asking for it, that will affect. And I'm sorry you feel that you say this, but Hanna, if you were an online troll and you're a Trumpite and you're going around making everybody's life miserable, should you be denied government benefits? Should you be denied to be able to shop at Aldi's or Meijer's? Should you be told you have to go to shit store over here who sells secondhand produce? That's
none of those things are like allowable. But all I'm saying is that people can see.
But that's going to happen. What are you going to do to prevent that? That's my problem here. Is that I don't care. Look, maybe you have a somewhat of a good solution, but until you look at everything around it and how it affects everything else in absolute, absolutely. Because again, let's go back to the China experience. They're doing similar to what you're saying, just on a bigger scale. But they're doing it similar, and people are being banned from flights. Families are told you cannot go to these upscale schools. You are creating a class race, and you're demonizing others around you based on other people's accountability. It almost feels very biblical. It feels very biblical if you can chastise children for what their parents' sins are.
But you prefer anonymity, so that you can say whatever you want on the internet, and no one would ever know who you are or what you're saying. You just prefer a society where there is no accountability. We don't have that right now, and you and I both know that. That doesn't actually exist right now. We don't. You can't say anything you want online. Yes, can you go to an extreme and be able to get away with a lot of things? Yes. Does that happen all the time though? No, Hanna, that does not. We have things in place right now that do affect everything you're talking about doing without giving somebody a social credit score that follows them around.
And when people make
you
shitty
keep going back to it, I don't want to give people social credit score. All I want to do is decrease the transparency.
Okay.
Increase the
so
transparency.
If it creates a social credit score, what are you going to do? What are you going to do about that? How are you going to prevent it from creating a social credit score? That's what I ask. You can't put something in place. Again, when you think of it in a manufacturing terms, you don't just go, hey, this is where I think this should go. I'm going to do it and test it. Unless you're willing to accept the fact that if your test fails, you're going to eat the cost of that to your customer. You're not going to go to you're going to do a lot of research, a lot of planning, and a lot of understanding right around that whole characteristic. You're not just going to walk in there and go, yep, hey, I'm pretty sure this is how it works. I've done this in the past. Oop, I made this part. Guess what? It doesn't work exactly the way you want it to. Oh, you didn't give me the exact scores. Oh, guess what? I'm going to have to charge you $50 to $100 or whatever the hell. I don't know what you charge, but whatever you charge, I'm going to charge you this, and I'm going to make another part for you. You're going to have people running away from you. And so that's all I'm saying is you think about things on a more deep level when it comes to your business and your livelihood. So to try and institute this anonymous thing, when you present all the ideas around it that will help prevent people from becoming, again, I don't care, unless you're raping people and doing something extremely illegal, then you belong in jail. If you're not doing something extremely illegal, you don't belong in jail. I don't think we should jail people that are, Trumpsters or people on the internet. We need to educate people that do that. And the problem is people
your idea for an education and the things that you're talking about there, like what we're talking about here, all I'm calling for is a transparency here. Like you keep going back to the credit score thing. Like I don't want to do that.
Prove to me. There you go. Prove to me how it's not going to get to that. That's all I ask, Hanna. All I'm telling you is that great, you have an idea, but to me it's like looking into this big vapid box and saying, "Oh, hey, your idea is as valid as somebody else's idea." Now, prove to me how it's not going to turn into this other thing. Because again, even if Black Mirror has taught us anything, is to look at the other side of things and at least consider it. You can't have this unanonymous online aspect without considering all of the ramifications that are coming from it. The difference is the Chinese government is embracing all these other things. You're saying I don't embrace it. So good. What are you going to do to prevent that from happening? Look, that Nathan guy we had on the show 2 years ago, that's a Trumpster, right? And he worked very hard, for the Trump campaign. I don't think that he should be out on the streets. I don't think that he should not be able to shop at Myers or I guess it's Kroger in Ohio. I don't think he should be able to have that. Do I think that he should be shamed for some of his ideas? Yes. Absolutely. But I'm not going to blacklist him from everything.
If he's online and he's Google user 125467, how would you ever know what he's done on the internet? All I'm saying, because you keep talking about taking this to the shaming, like you're taking this way too far. All I'm saying is that your internet history can be seen. Everything you do would be visible.
And in fairness, we had this discussion, 4 months ago about net neutrality. You're arguing for net neutrality right now with what you're saying. Hey, I want net neutrality.
Yes, I want the internet to be neutral. I completely and totally want the internet to be neutral.
Being neutral doesn't mean that nobody's anonymous. Being neutral does not mean that. No, absolutely not.
What would neutral mean? Everybody gets exactly the same equal platform. Yeah, that's what neutral means.
And that the difference is the way you prevent social discord is by giving some people anonymous to share their shitty ideas. And I'm sorry, but somebody creating a shitty online, formula where they talk about how much, they love white power, if they aren't taking it back into society, if they're not using it to, create an authoritarian, government, if they're not using it to create, a way to minimize and marginalize.
So you're a free speech absolutist then? Because I think we can go back to our past shows and see that you are absolutely not a free speech absolutist, and you would not like the people to be able to espouse Nazi paraphernalia.
I've never said that they can't espouse that, but I don't think that they should be consequence-free. But I never have ever advocated that we should turn around and just say, absolutely, everybody now is unanonymous. Could we create a statement where certain things fit into this category? Yes. Should we make this so that everybody's completely anonymous or unanonymous? No, that's the totally different idea behind that.
You're only unanonymous in the public sphere. They're the places where there are no restrictions. You can create a private group and have communications with people who are very similar to you. But the only thing I'm talking about here, and you're basically, you keep going back to the same thing, is that civilization and government is naturally going to have an authoritarian bent. They're going to create something with this information. I don't really think that's going to happen. I don't think that is a natural place where society is going to go.
I disagree with you. We're watching it happen right now. So when you can demonstrate that it's not that will not happen, then we can consider your point more than a hypothesis and give it a little bit of credibility. The problem is statistics and the way society is shown right now. In fairness, it shows that that's where it goes. And you can see the beginning argument we discussed, the beginning thing. Right now, people are outing this lady out of her house. God damn it! She's being told, get out of your house. People are sending her death threats, dude, for outing somebody who they feel should be on the Supreme Court because all they give a flying fuck about is the fact that they want a goddamn Republican to be in the Supreme Court.
Who sent the death threats?
I don't know. I haven't done enough research to tell you exactly who has.
All I'm saying is that anyone who sends a death threat to a woman who is saying that she was raped or accused, all I'm saying is that person who sends a death threat, they don't get to hide behind some fake anonymous internet profile. If you send a death threat to a person, everyone gets to see it.
And what it's going to do, you're right, and what it'll do is it will escalate. It'll escalate the need to have more police. It's going to escalate the need because again, people are still going to send them. It's going to have, dude. I had a friend at least that was with the CFI that had an alcohol problem that made a public phone call that he thought was anonymous. I don't know why he ever thought his name was anonymous, and he essentially threatened like a company shooting because they didn't hire him. He's in jail now. Now, he has a past history, too, of doing this. He's never actually done it, but he threatened it. He thought he was anonymous, and now he's in jail. It didn't prevent him in any way, shape, or form.
No, but if everyone in society knew that if what you were about to say, if you were about to send a death threat to a political figure, if that would be recorded and there was no way you could hide from it, it would create kind of a restrictive behavior. And that is my assumption. It will also create
a restrictive behavior on the opposite side until enough people want to stand up for, again, you don't want to be religious. You don't want to be known as a religious person. I don't want to be known as a religious person. I'll be honest, I don't walk out of my house though and go, hey, I'm an atheist. Hey, assholes, stop going to church on Sunday, or go to church, but don't judge me. There's people that judge us in Zealand here because of that. But I don't walk out of my house and do that. So either I have to keep quiet in a public sphere about my fucking personal beliefs, or I have to
do.
I do a little bit, but at the same time, I don't all the time.
There's no change for you. It's just any time that you do anything in the public sphere,
you don't. No. Is my Facebook public?
Yeah, it's not.
Okay.
And so you would still be able to hold.
Hold on.
Well, no, yeah,
my Facebook is 100% public. No, I don't privatize. About 1% of my posts are privatized. That's it. The majority of my posts are all public. You can Google my name and find me as an atheist very easily. Okay. You can do it. I did it. You can.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Basically what I'm saying is that in the end, like the whole idea of the Chinese credit score thing, that's dangerous. It's dangerous to society creating a social structure on that. But also, I would love to see society trying something. It could be maybe there's a small scale study where they could do it in a state, let's say a very progressive state that would be willing to try something like that, and they could prove me wrong, and I could completely change my preference. But I think that the internet has too much anonymity, and in that it really does. It on a net overall, it is a net negative. And like what you're talking about is like people that make accusations and they're doxxed. I understand that, and that is a potential side effect. And I just don't think that number is going to be as high as the number of people who are going to restrict their behavior and not send death threats and not send attacking emails and attacking messages, because every time they do that, it's going to be part of the public record. If they do it in a public sphere, in a public place, and or whatever, like private groups, we could maybe make changes and make that so that like if you're in a private group, you can keep it locked in or whatever. I mean, there's a ton of places where you can change this, but what I'm trying to do is decrease the ability of people to be anonymous trolls, to do whatever they want and then go back to their crappy job. If what I'm suggesting doesn't do that, I would happily and completely rescind my perspective, but I think that we need to do something to remove the anonymity. If what I'm suggesting doesn't do that, I will agree with you. I think we need to do something, and I don't think giving people more internet freedom as far as the ability to say something and not be in the public sphere, I don't think that helps. I really think we
haven't
need to do
advocated
something
for
different.
that. I haven't advocated we
That's what I'm
change
saying.
where we're going.
We're not completely
you're the
opposed.
one advocating for change, my friend. You're
Yes,
the one
and
advocating
I think
for
the internet
change.
the internet is a toxic place that needs to be changed. I think part of the evolution of the American political system is a direct reflection of what our current internet is. I mean, one of the things I have it in the docket for things that I want to talk about is changes to the First Amendment. There are some interesting conversations about what it is as far as free speech and what the internet and computational you can essentially bombard with millions and trillions of information bursts, and like we've talked about Alex Jones and the InfoWars thing. It's like if you start, and even with Donald Trump, if you yell the same thing loud enough and long enough over and over, eventually people will start believing you. And what we've done with the technology community is that we've created the ability to just bombard people with the same thing so incessantly and so intensely that you can do it anonymously, you can do it with a label like Alex Jones does, and eventually something will become the truth. And there are changes that need to happen, the way the human society is structured and the way the American pseudo-democratic society is structured. And I think that removing anonymity is a good place to start, and not going nearly as far as what China has done, but I think that something like that would be a benefit in the end, in the long run.
Yeah, maybe removing anonymity or whatever the hell you want to call it for death threats. Fine.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. I'll agree. I'll concede you to that, but removing total whatever the hell you want to call it, anonymousness, removing complete anonymousness is a ridiculous concept in and of itself. You want to create
and I won't be able to do it. Maybe it's utopian and I'll never be able to do it. But I mean, that's a place we can start. It's like no death threats. Anytime you make a death threat, everyone's gonna know who you are and where you sent it from. Like, there you go. We can start from there.
Go after people with hate speech. All right, fine. Well, let's start with the hate speech. So you want to call me out for it, right? So I'm gonna call you out a little bit back and say, hey, all I'm trying to get you to say is that you're looking at a extreme here. Like it feels like you walk all the way off to the extreme, and I'm saying I'll agree with you on certain aspects, right? There's certain things I do feel we could end the free speech conversation on because between the two of us, I'm pretty aggressively against not saying all free speech is free speech. I think that's a ridiculous concept.
Yep.
But I will not agree with you in any way, shape, or form when you posit the idea that we should get rid of anonymity, whatever the hell you want to call it again. That's the name of the episode, whatever the hell you want to call it. But
just spell it anonymity.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of A's and M's and I's and Y's.
You're not going to get, in my opinion, you can't move there because you haven't gone through the construct of understanding the ramifications it has worldwide based on what we've seen it have before. You want to start in a really small place that says, hey, if you do this, 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 and this, I'm okay with that. We already do that for people that are child molesters, people that are sexual abusers. They are put on a list, and it's a very public list. It
doesn't even have to be that. It's like the whole idea of a scale study when it comes to universal health care in Scandinavian countries, and we see a net positive benefit. I mean, we could do small scale studies where one state in the United States is essentially your internet is completely open and everyone gets to see what you do for 6 months. Does that restrict the number, or does that reduce the number of people who are just genuine dirtbags on the internet, or does it not change it at all?
No, well, I think there's I think there's a larger net consequence to opening the whole thing up. If you want to start small and then continue to let it go bigger, I actually can concede that side of it and say yes, I can understand. And I actually agree with the certain things like the hate speech, the openly, rampantly sexist discussions,
Just testing it and seeing what happens. Like, that's the whole idea. Is like removing anonymity so that people who are horrifying can't be completely and totally anonymous. And if we can find a way to curb 30% of that, that's 30% of the internet that isn't miserable. It's just small increments. Like the idea of doing everything all in one big giant chunk. I've created a philosophy that changes the whole world and everyone's going to be happy now. Like, I don't even pretend that I have that kind of insight into the human psyche or whatever's going on. So, like, I don't know. I would love to see some changes. I would love to see something that, China is going to do something and we're going to see what's happening here. That's another thing. It's like, this is an experiment that's happening. We're going to see what happens in China. And we have artists like Ai Weiwei who come to the rest of the world and they say, listen, China is an absolute authoritarian nightmare. And this is only going to make it worse. We're going to have leaks of people who are telling us what it's really like. And if it's this bad as everybody expects it to be, then that may change the whole idea of making the internet this place where we, I guess, I don't know, add numbers to everything that you do and start numerically evaluating everything. Like the Chinese test could be a good example to the rest of the world of what happens when you severely restrict free speech on the internet. But I think we've seen that in a lot of other authoritarian countries already. I'm thinking more of a democratic way of removing anonymity. You still get to say what you want, but we can see what you're saying.
Yeah.
The rest of us, not so much the government, but the rest of us. It's like the whole idea of like pure democracy where everything is open and everything is free.
I don't know. I don't agree with that. So as we end the show, though, you had a new thing you wanted to start testing out, right? We talked through the end of the show, and it's kind of funny if you watch other shows. And John Oliver is a favorite of both of ours. He always ends his show with "now this," right? It's like a dual segment. So we thought, hey, why we're not going to copy John Oliver in that aspect. No. We're only going to steal a little bit and say, hey, maybe we should do something a little bit different at the end of our shows.
Yeah, a lot of other podcasts that I've been listening to do it, and I find it an enjoyable thing. One of my favorite podcasts is the Atlantic Magazine podcast. They have a thing called Keepers, and I find it interesting. On NPR, the Pop Culture Happy Hour does a thing that's like, what is making you happy this week? And I find these little like tidbits, these things that make all of the people, sometimes random people, not always the same host on the shows. It helps like kind of normalize them. It helps kind of humanize them and remove them from this monolith of a on radio, on air personality. And so like my idea, and we talked about it just at the beginning of the show, is like the idea of like a quick save. If you're playing a game, so the quick save obviously is a video game metaphor or reference, is that you're playing a game, something interesting is about to happen. Something cool is going to happen, you can quick save. And in some games you can quick save multiple times, and so you can go back to these places and see what happened, relive it, redo whatever. And so like I like the idea of the quick save thing. It's like you're experiencing life, you're going through the world, you're surfing Reddit, you're browsing Facebook, you're trolling someone on 4chan, and you quick save something because of something interesting. And I something that's just interesting enough to the point where you would want to put it on the show here. So like my quick save for this week is there was a person who basically said they solved the Riemann hypothesis. And I don't know if anyone knows on this. The Riemann hypothesis is basically it's a mathematical assumption that brings people into the prime number theory, and the distance between each prime number, the further out you get, essentially prime numbers are not really predictable. There could be 5,000 numbers between one prime number at the 16, 25 digit whatever prime numbers, and then the next one could be 14,332 away. Like that distance between those prime numbers, there is no mathematical function that can tell you that distance that they've been able to solve. And the Riemann hypothesis is one of those things. It's basically that it makes prime number theory valid. And so that all of the encryption that we use, you can't solve it. And the prime numbers are a major function of that. And there's a guy who in the New Scientist, he basically says that he has possibly sort of confirmed the Riemann hypothesis, and what that would do would be essentially to solve one of the what is the name of it? It's the the Millennium Prize. There's a Millennium Prize, and each problem is a mathematical problem that has a $1 million solution. If you solve it, you get $1 million straight up. It's just like the Nobel Prize and some of those other things that have really big prize. But the mathematician Michael Atiyah, he has delivered what he claimed is a proof of the Riemann hypothesis, and it's a challenge that has eluded his peers for nearly 160 years. Is how long this has been going on, that we haven't had proof for the hypothesis. And so, everyone, I recommend you take a look at what the Riemann hypothesis is. It's RIEMANN is the way you spell his last name, and check it out. It's got something to do with some number theory and some really complicated stuff. But if this happens to be true, this guy's going to get a sweet $1 million, and he could possibly invalidate most encryption in the entire Earth.
Which is a little scary because none of us need our credit cards stolen any more than they already are nowadays. We just don't. That would be a nightmare. So, my quick save. Yours was that's a good one. I actually did not know about that, and now I kind of want to go back, and I would love to actually solve that problem, win the $1 million. You know, I would like that. That would be kind of fun. But my quick save for the week is something that I've been talking about with my kids. So there's a little show called Adventure Time. Don't know if you ever heard of it before, but in fairness,
just finished, didn't it?
It did. It just finished September 3rd. And, you know, Adventure Time, you know, started out with me as kind of just this weird, quirky show. It kind of felt like a cooler SpongeBob that didn't laugh 24/7 or have an idiot sidekick that, you know, didn't understand how anything works, right? It felt like a little bit more of a mature SpongeBob type episode. They're all 15 minutes long or 12 minutes long or something like that. Very short bursts. But to begin with, it felt very immature. It was okay. But, you know, it focused a lot on this D&D stuff. Well, as the series has progressed, and now it ends its 10th season, it built a story actually behind it. There's, you know, the story of Princess Bubblegum, you know, Marceline, Finn and Jake. Where did they come from? How does this all intertwine together? And they actually built this really cool story. Well, inside of the story, you know, he's got some girlfriends. He's always interested in these other girls, right? You know, Jake's kind of the amorphous blob that, you know, that has one girlfriend and they have kids together, yada, 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 right? But, you know, there's always been a very big hint inside of the story about Princess Bubblegum's backstory and how the whole thing works. And I know this sounds very silly, right? I'm saying Princess Bubblegum, and that just sounds ridiculously silly, you know, but at the exact same time, when you get into the depth of the story, we had a mainstream children's show that started to hint at the normalization of LGBT relationships. And this is not a new thing for Cartoon Network, in fairness. And actually one of the writers, and this is what impressed me the most, is one of the writers, and I actually started watching this show with my kids, called Steven Universe. One of the writers, who has been a very big progressive, actually helped build some of that storyline between Marceline and Princess Bubblegum. And I'll just say, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the end of the series or care, turn the episode off right now.
Yeah, off. Turn it off.
All right, so moving past the spoiler alert, they essentially, at the very end of the episode, they have this gigantic war for the last episode of the season, for the whole show, and they kiss. And it's finally revealed that Marceline has feelings for Princess Bubblegum and vice versa, and they're actually able to show it. And it's an on-screen, you know, lesbian kiss, basically, right? And then at the very, very end, as they roll credits and they get throughout all of it, you kind of see how everybody's story wrapped up and what everybody did. And you see them, you know, sharing a couch, watching TV together, holding hands and laying next to each other like a couple. And a lot of people, you know, like my kids kind of, you know, have passed over that. They think that stuff's normal. That's exciting to me because so cool. We no longer have to worry about who you date. You don't have to worry about these other things. It's now becoming a normalized thing. And I'm sorry to all you religious fuckheads, and I'll just say it because I think I've ruined the explicit tag on this one.
We definitely have an explicit episode here.
I'm sorry, fuck you. I don't give a fuck about your religion. I don't give a flying fuck what you think. This is natural. This is normal. Get it out of your goddamn religious gut and get off my fucking show. But this is how you help teach children about acceptance. None of my daughters have expressed, you know, that they have any interest in dating women, right? Or anything like that. but they understand the concept of the normalization of,
and it's not that weird if it does happen,
and of these marginalized minorities, and they ask the questions like, why is this controversial? You know, like my one son was like, oh, holy crap, I didn't know that, and Cadence is like, I don't know how you didn't see that. And
did you see the video of the Adventure Time ending at Comic-Con where one of the women who had done a bunch of the music played a song for one of the series creators?
No, I don't think I saw that, actually.
Dude, look it up. I recommend everyone take a look. It's one of the women who either is a character on the show. She's a voice actor, obviously, because they're cartoons. She plays a song that she wrote specifically for the series creators, and it's just a tear jerk fest. Everyone is just this blubbering, snotty, crying mess because she sings this beautiful song. And one of the big things that brought it to my mind is like the series creator, the showrunner, the guy who's in charge of it. Like essentially, he's just bearing it. Like this is a big deal. Like people think of a cartoon as being like whatever, it's a cartoon, but it's real, man. It is real, and it's a really cool moment. I'll see if I can find a link real quick, and we can share it in the descriptions. But if it isn't in there, everyone should take a look and just try to see if you can find it because it's beautiful.
Well, thank you all for joining the show tonight. I'm going to leave you with my answer to Chris Hanna's desire to create an unanonymous internet and what happened in Black Mirror.
The fuck are you looking at?
Just what I was wondering.
Well, don't.
Don't wonder?
Uh-huh.
Be a dull world without wonder.
I don't give a shit about your world.
I don't like your brassiere.
I don't like your mustache.
I don't like your aura.
My aura?
Yeah.
I don't like your head. Your entire head is just ridiculous to me.
Really?
You look like an alcoholic former weatherman.
You sound like a lost little lamb that just got told there's no Santa Claus.
What sort of cartoon character did your mom have to fuck to brew you up in the womb?
At least I look like I was born, not shit out by some tormented cow creature in an underground lab.
You got tossed out of that lab.
Oh yeah?
Oh yeah, flushed out.
Ooh.
In the trash. Your face is a fucking biological car crash that'd make Picasso screw his eyes up and say, well, that just don't make sense.
You're a fucking asshole.
Fuck you!
Fuck you next Wednesday.
Fuck you for Christmas.
Fuck you!
If you'd like to join the ranks of Patreons and sponsor the show, head over to patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics. For less than a 20-ounce soda or an energy drink each week, you can help sponsor us, the hosts, and our charity of choice. Patreon helps Cellar Door Skeptics create better content, become better activists, and it's going to help you stay healthier by drinking one less soda or one less energy drink each week. Click the link in the notes of the show to sponsor us today because we bring the discussion with the sources.